In the very last movie, we went ahead and covered um, the toolbar and most of the tools that are very helpful for photographers. If you missed that movie, you can go ahead and check it out before you see this movie. If not, let's go ahead and follow through. What we're going to discuss right now is the image adjustments panel. And one of the things I want to go ahead and point out is that when you're working with an image, it depends on how you're going to use it. If you're going to be using layers, and some of the layers have transparencies, but you want to affect all the layers um, with an adjustment, it's best if you use an adjustment layer. But if you're just going to go ahead and work on a single image without even doing any layers, you can go ahead and start working straight off the bat. Um, Before, the brightness and contrast used to be a very weak uh, adjustment layer or adjustment uh, that really wasn't. I mean, if you used it, chances are you did not like the results. So going back to it, we're gonna go ahead and go to brightness, and it actually brightens up everything. And we're gonna go into contrast, and less contrast, more contrast, so you can see what it does for you. Um, but the one underneath it, the levels, is actually one of my favorite tools to go ahead and use when I'm working with images. It gives me, I think, a lot of control. And I'll go over what the levels panel does in depth because I think that once you master levels, I mean, you can use curves, but I think just levels is just amazing. Let's go ahead and touch base on it. Here you get your levels input, and this is basically your white point, your black point, and here's your histogram. Basically, it's saying that everything that is on the opposite end of this area right here is gonna be white. So you start seeing that it's clipping some highlights, and the more that you go, the more highlights are clipped. So everything on the right hand side of the white area is going to be white. So you start seeing that a lot of highlights are clipping out. Now, same goes with the black. The more you move it in, the more things are black. So everything on the left side of the black is going to be cut off or clipped off. Then you have your gamma point, and what this does, it goes ahead and um, pulls in more. Like, for example, if you move over to the left hand side, it's pulling more blacks in, so you get a darker image. You move it to the left hand side, you're putting more whites that way, so it's a brighter image. um, then you got your output levels, and to give you a real good representation of this, if I were to move the white point, so a lot of colors are actually being clipped off, and I move the luminosity level here, um, the white is no longer white, it's actually gray. So even if I'm clipping colors, it doesn't actually become brighter, it just becomes grayer. Um, and if I go ahead and pull this back to white, start seeing that it's a very bright object. Now, you do have other advanced features in here because you can actually target certain color spectrums. You can target the red so that only the red is actually um, more highlighted. And this is where you have to have your knowledge of the color wheel, and that colors opposite of the color wheel cancel themselves out. So let me go ahead and use the paintbrush, and this will allow me to go ahead and press Shift Alt and right click, and I don't have the HUD wheel. I'll need to change that to a HUD wheel so I can go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. So we'll go to General, and we'll use the median wheel. Shift Alt and click. So now we have a wheel right here. Now if you notice, there's colors on the opposite end, and they basically go ahead and cancel each other out. Your yellows will go ahead and cancel out the blues. Your magentas will be canceled out by greens, and everything in between will be canceled out. Like here you have your cyan, and it gets canceled out by red. Then you got your magentas, green and yellows, blues, and oranges will get canceled out with um, aqua. So anything opposite of the color will go ahead and cancel itself out. So with that in mind, um, when you go into levels and you're targeting points like red, well, red gets canceled out by cyan. So if you move this area right here, you're actually adding cyan to the picture. If you move red inward, you're actually adding more red. And when you go ahead and add green, well, green gets canceled out by magenta. So you move it in here, you add magenta, and if you go ahead and move this inward, you actually get more green. And um, in the end, blue gets canceled out by yellow. So you move this inward, you go ahead and get more yellow, and you get more blue. And what's good about this is that in case your image is not color balanced correctly, you can go ahead and balance it out properly using the red, green, blue channels with knowledge that if you add more colors, the way that they react differently. Um, and if in case for whatever reason you get lost in this, you can always hold the Alt and it'll go ahead and go back to the way it was before. And let me just go ahead and just give you a real good example of that. I think now the image is completely unrepairable. So what we'll do is just hold the reset and it goes back to normal. And the other thing you can do is you can go ahead and select color picker so you can go ahead and see what they do, because here you're looking at this area right here with the foreground, and actually it's the color that I would want it to be versus how the highlight's very blown out. But now let's go ahead and talk about curves, because even though I say levels is very good, curves has everything that the levels has. You have your inputs, you got your outputs. When you move it up, you're adding white. When you move it down, you're adding black. And um, the middle part is actually the gamma point. So when you pull up, you're adding you're pulling in more whites. When you pull it down, you're pulling in more black. So very interesting. The purpose of curves is for you to have sort of like an S curve, and it should give you a more punchy image. In this case, is the opposite. So we'll just switch it around, and we'll see what it gives us. And there is the more contrasty image. Um, so you can see the point. And going back to levels, you can actually do the same thing on levels. If you go ahead and hold down the Alt, um, you actually see what parts are going to start getting clipped out, what's being affected. So you can see that this image is now a little bit more contrasty, but not that many colors were clipped. So we'll just press OK and we leave it as that. We'll go on and cover exposure in the next movie, or actually we'll skip over exposure and we'll go ahead and talk about now the colors, because what this does, it goes ahead and covers the brightness level, contrast in the very first tabs, and this covers color, and this goes ahead and covers sort of something in between. Shadows and highlights is something that should be used, and we'll go over that as well.